All right, this is the podcast of notes for environmental science, and the unit is weather. So please take notes into a notebook or print off the notes outline that was provided for you on Google Classroom. So first thing we need to do is review what weather is. And so we got a definition here at first, up at the top. Weather is daily condition of the Earth's atmosphere. That is different from climate, which we did in the web quest. Climate is the overall, not just daily condition of the Earth's atmosphere. There are 4 things that will interact that can cause the weather to happen. And those are the 4 things we're going to go into. Number 1 is heat energy, so we'll define that in a minute. Number 2 is air pressure. Number 3 are the different kinds of winds that occur. And then number 4 is the moisture that occurs. All right, so the first factor that interacts to cause weather is heat energy, the heat. And as you probably have learned before, almost all of the Earth's energy, that heat energy, comes from the sun. And so when the sun hits the Earth, that heat is spread through the atmosphere in 3 different ways. You might have learned this in a physics or physical science class. Number 1 is conduction. Conduction is a direct transfer of energy from one substance to another. Like touching a stove, you directly feel that transfer of energy from the stove to your skin. Number 2 is convection. That's the movement of heat in a liquid or in a gas. For example, the movement of heat, that hot air will rise in the air, and then cooler air will sink. And then the third way that heat is spread through an atmosphere is radiation. And that's the transferring of heat through empty space. So that would be, for example, the sun's rays actually traveling to the Earth. All right, so talking about radiation, that all kind of goes into the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect, your first bullet is up on the right, the big paragraph there. So what's happening in the greenhouse effect is that some of the infrared radiation is passing through the atmosphere. Some of it is going to be absorbed, and some of it is going to be re-emitted in all directions by greenhouse gas molecules. The effect of this is to warm the Earth's surface and the lower atmosphere. Your second bullet is on the left. Some solar radiation is reflected by the Earth and the atmosphere. So you can see that in the diagram with the arrows. Your next bullet is on the far left. Most radiation is absorbed. So some of it is reflected, but most of it is absorbed by the Earth's surface, and then it warms the Earth's surface, which is the definition of radiation. And then on the far right is your last bullet. Infrared radiation is also emitted by the Earth's surface. The activities that we have embedded in the notes we will be doing next week. So we will be working on a map with heat energy. It's called an isothermic map. So you will see that next week. All right, the second factor that interacts to cause weather is air pressure. Air pressure, definition first, is a measure of the force of the air pressing down on the Earth's surface. Air pressure is affected by 3 things. So number 1 is going to be temperature. So temperature comes into play. The hotter it is, the less the pressure. So in parentheses, it says increasing temperature is going to result in decreasing pressure. So there's an inverse relationship there. The second factor that affects air pressure is number 2, water vapor. The more moisture there is in the air, that also decreases the pressure. Inverse relationship. And then number 3, the third factor that affects air pressure is elevation. The higher the elevation you are, the less pressure there is. So all 3 of them are inverse relationships, where one is going up and the other one goes down. All right, going into a little bit more for air pressure. We're going to go into measuring air pressure. Air pressure is measured with a barometer. High pressure systems, when you get high air pressure, you're going to have fair weather, so pretty nice weather with few clouds. And if you get a low pressure system, that is going to produce our icky weather of clouds and rain. Next week, we'll be looking at air pressure and doing an isobaric map. All right, our third factor that interacts to cause weather is the wind. Wind definition: it is simply just the movement of air from one place to another. Air moves from areas of high pressure to areas of low pressure, and we'll be marking that on a map. And then there's two types of winds we'll be looking at: local winds and global winds. Again, part of our activity next week, we will be doing a wind map, or it's also called a streamline map. And our fourth and final factor that interacts to cause weather is moisture. The word we need to learn is humidity. Humidity is the moisture in the air or the water vapor that's in the air. When you are listening to a weather forecast on the news, meteorologists refer to relative humidity. Relative humidity is the percentage of moisture that the air can hold relative to the amount it could hold at a certain temperature. And I'm going to show you a chart and how to calculate that. The tool used to measure relative humidity is called a sling psychrometer, which is pictured in the picture. This activity we would have done if we were in school. We would have tested the relative humidity of the air in the courtyard. So this is a chart to figure out what the relative humidity is. So basically you would take a temperature outside, and that is a dry bulb, like a dry thermometer, and you would that on the y-axis it goes from 30 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And so you would get the temperature outside. So like today might have been about 45 degrees. And then we would have took a wet bulb as well out in the courtyard. So it's just a temperature bulb that had moisture on the bulb part, and took the temperature with that thermometer. And then we would see what the difference was between the wet bulb and the dry thermometer. And that difference, so you go from 1 to 25, you would use that. And so then you would just basically, let's say it was 5 difference, then you would just go down from 5, right, to 45, and then you would say, okay, the relative humidity is 64. All right, and then the last thing we're going to look at is clouds. There are 3 major types of clouds, even though there's a lot of different names of them. There are 3 major types. The first one is called cumulus, and those are the fun ones, the fluffy cotton ball-like ones. I have pictures of it on the next slide. Your second major type is stratus, and those are the smooth, they're more grayer clouds, they cover the entire sky. And then your third major type are the feathery or the fibrous, more lines in them kind of clouds, and those are called cirrus. There are different combinations of these, so all other names for the clouds are still coming from these main major types. So here is a picture of the different kinds of clouds, and you can see that most of them have one part of the name of some of those major ones that we just talked about. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is just go through some practice questions, so please fill these out on your sheet. First question is, what are the 4 factors that interact to cause weather? And so those 4 factors are heat energy, number 2, air pressure, number 3, wind, and number 4, moisture. Number 2, the constant circulating motion of magma under the Earth's surface is an example of, and your answer would be convection. Number 3, true or false, air pressure is lower on the top of a mountain than at the bottom of the mountain, and your answer would be true. Number 4, what is the instrument used to measure air pressure? Your answer would be a barometer. True. Number 5, true or false, if you are having a cloudy and a rainy kind of weather day, you are likely experiencing a high pressure system. That is false. A high pressure system would produce nice weather, like fair weather and very few clouds. Number 6, wind moves from areas of blank to blank pressure. Your answer should have been high to low. Number 7, winds are named based on the direction that they, I don't know if you guys know this, A, coming from or moving towards. And actually the answer is A, coming from. Number 8, the tool used to measure relative humidity is called a sling psychrometer. And the last question, the clouds that are big and fluffy like cotton are called cumulus.